realizing that on Instagram Live, my logo is backwards. So
Yeah.
that's very cake for dinner. So we'll just give a few minutes.
Right?
Yeah, let people join. And then typically I just do a very brief introduction and then we'll go through your book. And then, sometimes people have questions and sometimes they don't. So let's just let
Ah,
a few more people join.
I think I might fix my lighting. I realized this morning that I don't have a little stand for my phone.
Oh, yeah, they're very easy. Just grab one on Amazon.
I know. Actually I did. I used to have a stand, and I went looking for it this morning, and it's like missing its top.
Oh,
I'm like, oh, well, that's perfect. I found like another piece, and I'm like, well, that's not gonna. So
that's not going to happen.
but isn't that life?
That is life. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So today I'm sitting down with Dr. Danielle Dowling, clinical psychologist and author of Good Girl, Bad Mom, a raw, honest look at what happens when you love your life but still feel like you're disappearing inside of it. Dr. Danielle Dowling, welcome to Cake for Dinner Live.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate the time.
Amazing. So this is the book, everybody. I will link it in the show notes. I love this cover, by the way. Such a cute look.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it would make a good coffee table book. You
Yes.
can read a page. It's just,
Yeah, but such a great idea. And I like the tagline for every mom who has ever felt imperfect. Love
yeah.
that.
I, what mom hasn't felt
What
imperfect?
mom? Yeah, that's like everyone. So maybe before we get started in my questions, like why did you write the book? What was your personal experience? What was happening? Why did you write the book?
Yes. So thank you for asking that. I started the book when my son was about 6.5 years old. I have one son. I had
Mhm.
him when I was 40 years old, so a little bit of a later mom. And I wrote Good Girl, Bad Mom because by that point, I had felt like I had done everything right in motherhood.
Mhm.
The way as being a good mom, right? I'm trying really hard. I'm doing everything right, and I still found myself feeling extremely anxious and exhausted and constantly wondering why motherhood felt so different than I thought it was going to feel.
Mhm.
Sometimes I make the joke, it's so different than like the brochure I got. Like the brochure,
Yes.
sunny white sand beaches and like palm trees and pina coladas. And like, this is not my experience. While there is a lot of joy and laughter and bliss, there's also, the antithesis of that. And I had no clue, and it really was kind of the undoing of me. And so I wanted to name what so many of us are living through but still rarely say out loud. Now there's
Mhm.
more and more and more women, especially here on social media, think right, this is the really good side, helpful side of social media, that are speaking up and are speaking about the reality of their motherhood experience. But systemically and culturally, there are still so many of us that are not saying out loud what they're experiencing. And I like to call that the motherhood fantasy, the invisible labor, the good girl conditioning. And quite honestly, the way the system eats women alive in
Mhm.
this particular role, like kind of in general as women, but particularly in the role as mother, and then asks us to be grateful. And
Right.
so this book is I don't know where my book went. This book is my way of saying, oh, you know what? It's holding my phone up. Thank you.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah. Um, so this book is my way of saying to the mom who feels overwhelmed and overstimulated and like she's smiling through the struggle, it is my way of saying, you're not broken, you're burdened. It's not you, it's the setup. And so I wrote it to be a friend inside the difficult parts of motherhood, really like a companion.
Mhm.
Yes, also a mirror. Um, uh, and in some ways, because there's a movement aspect of the book for sure, a small revolution in your hands. So she can stop blaming herself and start changing the story. And I'll add one last piece, which I've been talking about more lately, which is that the book really started as a journaling exercise for me, because by the time my son was 6.5, right around that time, I couldn't swallow and hold in the enormity of the frustration and the confusion and the anger and the resentment and the sometimes the rage, um, and the guilt and the shame, all of these feelings happening inside the role of mother. I could not hold it in anymore. I was smiling through all that struggle. I was blaming myself, and I had a mentor say to me, and this is the irony about it, because I'm a therapist trained life coach, right? Like I do both. But I had to have somebody else say to me, why don't you start writing down how you really feel? But it
Right.
goes to show you how ashamed I felt of my guilt and of my anger and of my resentment, that as somebody who's trained, right, to be open to feeling all the feelings and to investigating them and to being curious about them and bringing healing to them, that I couldn't, up until that point, I didn't even think of writing down for myself how I felt. And so
Right.
Good Bad Mom started as a journaling exercise, and somewhere into like maybe what is now the fourth or fifth chapter, it like dawned on me, I'm like, I can't be the only one that feels this way, and maybe this is something more.
Well, thank you so much for writing it down. Honestly, I do think, to your point, there are more people talking about it now. And really, that's what this podcast is. I can remember dropping my kids off at probably like pre-K maybe. And I was a single mom at the time, and, two, however, 4-year olds. And my son was like a disaster at drop off. He would cry, he would run away. I mean, it was a complete shit show. So by the time I wrestled him into the class, I would come out, my hair would be a mess. Like I would usually be crying. And there would be moms that like looked so put together and like their outfits, and they were smiling and gathering around their cars to talk. And I remember thinking, like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? I felt like I had run a marathon. When you see marathons and there's like the people holding the little cups of water. Like I
Yes.
felt like there should be people holding little cups of water on my way back to the car. You know what I mean?
I or
But
something. Good job, mom.
something, but like everybody else looked like they were having a good time, and maybe they were, and maybe my kid was hard, but I really feel like there's so much value in us having these conversations, because there are moms coming up behind us. And I think two things can be true. Motherhood can be very difficult, but also you can be very grateful for having the opportunity to do it. I love being a mom, but it's hard.
Yes, and chapter 10 of this, what you're speaking about, is one of the central tenets of Good Girl, Bad Mom, and my point of view of motherhood. And one
Mhm.
that I think and I talk about this in the book, I think we need to, as women, as mothers, need to begin saying out loud without guilt, which is that motherhood is a joy, but it's also a job.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the job is a big one. The job
The
is,
job is a big one. Yes, yes. I had my third kid at 40, so I also have compassion for that. So your book talks a lot about loving your kids, but still feeling like you're disappearing. Why do so many women feel that no one says, why do so many women feel this, but not say it out loud? So we're talking a lot about there is more of it, but what do you think that thing is that keeps people from saying, holy shit, this is hard?
yeah, so this is such a great question, and it gets to the heart of it, because what I call the motherhood setup is happening.
Mm-hmm.
The motherhood setup is a framework I use to explain why motherhood feels so overwhelming, and why women are taught that that overwhelm is their fault. So women aren't disappearing because they're doing something wrong. They're
Mm-hmm.
disappearing because they're operating inside a role, the role of motherhood, that quietly asks them for their identity, time, energy, and their entire selfhood without ever naming the cost.
Hmm.
And most women, most moms don't say it out loud because they can think that admitting that it is frustrating and confusing and makes them feel angry and overwhelmed and overstimulated also makes them ungrateful.
Right.
When really it just makes them honest.
Right. And it really is the whole journey. Like I can remember hearing like when I was younger that my mom, when she had my brother, she was, she went into the hospital in her best jeans and she left in them, And I was like, shit, like I couldn't squeeze my ass in these jeans if you gave me $1 million. So I was already feeling inadequate just based on this one story. So I think it starts out of the gate and it sort of follows us if we're not careful.
Yeah, and I think you know what I'm thinking about while you're talking. I'm also thinking back to what you were saying earlier. What after you drop your son off and you see all these moms sort of perfectly dressed and pulled together in the parking lot. I think I look like one of those perfectly dressed, ready. Like I get ready in the morning, and I so how it look, and you wouldn't know until
Yes.
I read this book, until we had this kind of conversation, that while I might like look composed and together and having a conversation with three of those other moms while you're crying on the way back to your car, that I feel this way.
Yes.
And that's so my point being is that you never know. My mom used to say, she passed away in 2022, but she always used to say, Danielle, you never know what's going on behind closed doors.
Hmm.
And so while it might look one way on the outside, you don't always know what's going on the inside. And so
Hmm.
same thing with your mom's just another example of that in some
Hmm.
ways, right? Like
Well,
that was
also
her.
it's also our perception, right? Like some of them, it's me looking at it through the lens of inadequacy, right?
Yeah.
So some of those moms, I've now written my own book and talked to some of those moms as I'm writing. They weren't at all having that experience. Some of them were, some of them weren't. But they also weren't trying to look a particular way. A lot of that was me,
Yeah.
looking through the lens of inadequacy. So I also think, you grow up and so much of this is like hard-earned wisdom.
So it's interesting because I call that good girl conditioning,
Mm,
how it can look on the outside also. I think good girl conditioning is the training that so many of us get, spoken or unspoken, that it's our job to be agreeable, to be impressive, to be low maintenance. Yeah,
mhm.
it's and to maybe look a certain way also. And so I think that that contributes to
Sure.
some of the confusion and some of the good girl in many, like the good mom in many ways is just a good girl with a diaper bag, right? The good girl training, it the good mom is a good girl with a diaper bag, is what I
Mm,
usually say.
mhm.
And so we feel like there's a certain facade we have to also keep up in order to measure up, to not let people down. So I think that contributes to this as well.
Totally. You write about the pressure to be a good mom. What does that even mean psychologically? And who are we actually performing for?
Yeah, okay, so this is back to what I was just saying. A lot of what we call being a good mom is actually what I call good girl conditioning. So it's this internalized pressure to be pleasant, to be capable, to be selfless, and to be
Right.
maintenance, even when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that was me walking through the parking lot, right? I'm just
Hmm.
covering it how I feel it with a smile, with a little red lipstick, right? And calling it good. So women aren't just mothering, they're performing goodness.
Oh, that's
It's
good.
a so and I'm a recovering good girl, and I see the good girl trope as a performance. It's performative. Yeah.
Hmm.
For a
Hmm.
good reason. The psychology behind it is that, it's a way to protect myself. It's a good girl conditioning is just a nervous system response to the desire for love, safety, and belonging, right? It's how I can earn that.
Hmm.
So the good girl slash the good mom is performing for culture, for family systems, for
Hmm.
partners. And for the part, this is the most important part. For the part of themselves that learned early on that being good was how you secured love, safety, and belonging.
Hmm.
So that's also one of the reasons that women don't speak up about how difficult it is.
Yeah, I mean, it makes
Gotta
so
be
much
good.
sense.
Yeah, I've got to be good at it.
You touch on invisible labor and emotional overload. Why is this still so hard for women to name, even now?
Um, because invisible labor is invisible,
Hmm.
right? So we don't see it. I think we begin to see it when we talk about it. That's one way to begin recognizing it in our lives. Um, invisible labor is the mental load,
Hmm.
the emotional regulation, the planning, the anticipating, the remembering,
Hmm.
um, the holding of everyone and everything. And if you're
I
doing,
literally was thinking, what is invisible labor? But like as you're describing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much invisible labor.
there's so much invisible labor, um, and it's hard to name. Like nobody sees it, right? Nobody sees it, and that's why it's hard to name. But it's also hard to name again because of good girl conditioning, what we just talked about, and this other force. So I talked about the motherhood setup, but this other force, I see it as a collision of three forces. This other force called the motherhood fantasy,
Hmm.
and I feel like
Hmm.
this can relate to a lot. So the story that we've been sold, that women have been sold, that motherhood should feel natural, effortless, and spiritually fulfilling at all times.
Right.
And then when it doesn't, because even if you love motherhood, you're going to hit points when it doesn't.
Hmm.
If you love motherhood, it's hard. If you don't like it, it's hard. It's just that's
Right.
I haven't heard it any other way. Yeah. But so when it feels hard, when it feels suffocating, when it feels monotonous, when it feels overwhelming, when it feels overstimulating, a woman doesn't question the fantasy. She questions herself.
Right. Right.
She assumes something is wrong with her. So when we have that good girl conditioning, be grateful, be pleasant, don't be a burden, and then you have women carrying this enormous workload that is invisible, they begin to feel ashamed for struggling under it because she's taught the motherhood fantasy says, if you're doing it right, you won't struggle. And if you struggle, this is all unsaid, right? It's just in the water, it's in the air. If you're doing motherhood right, you won't struggle. And if you struggle, it's a character flaw.
Right. People been doing this forever. So it's like,
Why are you having a problem now? When really
right.
it's that women just haven't felt safe to speak up. Or we lived in a different time in humanity when people roamed the earth in tribes of 37 people, and women truly had a tribe. They were raising each other's children, they were working together.
Right.
Because what mothers basically do an entire corporate organization chart. They are every single role: human resources, crisis management, planning, strategy and development, all,
Hmm.
all of that, and admin, right? Women do, in the corporate, in the workforce, those roles are given titles, salaries, and guess what? Teams.
Hmm.
But in modern motherhood, she's expected to do all of that for free, mind you, by herself.
Hmm.
So it's because of the motherhood fantasy that we often don't recognize that the workload itself is overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the huge benefit to female friendships, right? Like, I mean, without those, you really, really feel alone in it.
Yeah, you know what? And I find that even then, in the early days, even then, you might allow yourself a little bit of a complaint,
Hmm.
a little
Hmm.
bit of that, but it's done neatly because you don't want anybody to think that you don't love your child. And this is, I think, the confusion that if I admit it's work, if I admit I really don't like it some days, I don't like motherhood some days, I don't like the job, I actually maybe don't even like my child today,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Um, it means that you don't love your child. When
Hmm.
again, they're two totally separate truths. You cannot like the job and absolutely love your child, which is chapter 10 of Good Girl, Bad Mom, which is titled Motherhood is a Joy, but it's also a job. And you don't
Mhm.
always have to like it. And that's okay. And it's no referendum. It's no verdict on how much you love your child.
Right. I think having multiples gives you a little bit of an out regarding that. When you say you have twins, people automatically feel like that's hard. So
Yeah.
it does give you a little, like immediately, it almost gets annoying because immediately people are like, oh, wow, double trouble, or you get all these like things. So
Yeah.
it gives you a little out
Yeah.
in that area.
Yeah.
A lot of moms feel resentment and then immediately feel shame. What's really happening there beneath the surface?
Okay.
I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but.
Yeah, and we talk about I talk about resentment in the book too because I talk about my resentment and just
Mhm,
investigating, getting really curious about it.
mhm,
Um, so I've come to a place where I perceive resentment as information. And I think it's a signal that a woman has been overgiving, under supported, and carrying too much for too long. Again, inside that same kind of motherhood setup where the labor isn't fully seen and or shared, um, because many women have been conditioned to equate need with weakness,
mhm,
or anger with failure, or so when we do that, the resentment gets shut down. Yeah, it gets shut down before we can allow it to actually guide any kind of meaningful change. Um so the good girl tries to win motherhood the same way she's won everything else, and that's by performing, right? That's by being competent. That's by not asking too much. That's by making it look effortless. And might I say, this is back to a little bit of like invisible labor and just the system. This is incredibly convenient for the cultural setup, because when a woman blames herself, you
right.
tell me if it's accurate for you. Because when a woman blames herself, she won't demand change. She'll
Mhm.
just try harder. And so then the whole loop continues, right? When in reality, the work of motherhood is massive, the support is thin, and the cultural expectation is that a woman will endure and endure quietly. So
Mm.
she's following the shame.
And even further, I think, and maybe this is just me, but I think there is some pride or like I have often felt like almost like proud of the fact that I can endure so much.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. Because then you can feel, well, this is a little bit of good girl, right?
Yes, like I'm so good at that.
So I'm
Yeah.
so confident, right? I make it look effortless. I'm low maintenance. I'm agreeable. Oh, look at me being impressive.
It's
So,
so wild because so much of that feels different than what it really is. Like I took such pride in being a single mom with twins, single mom with two 2-year-olds. I could say it 1,000 times. You know what I mean? Like it was like,
mhm,
you know,
go ahead.
I just think that, but I really relate to what you're saying that yes, that is sort of how I saw it at the time, but that is really me trying to fit into this mold of the good girl and sort of be like my mom. My mom had 4 kids with no money and, you know, um, I'm sort of trying to live up to that, if you will.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it makes a ton of sense.
And I think, and I just want to add, there is so much to be proud of.
Totally.
There is. So this is not an either or conversation. There is so much to be proud of. A
But you
single,
don't have to prove it by, you can just feel proud.
yeah. I think it's for a woman. The work is for a woman to kind of go inside and be
Mhm.
curious rather than judgmental, and sort of sift and sort out what aspects of her role as a mom, she can absolutely 100% feel proud of, and what aspects are performative, being driven by the desire to feel like she's earned love, safety, and belonging.
Yes,
And
totally.
so minute. It's like a big
Yeah.
ball of yarn all jumbled up, and you have to like untangle it, right? Be like,
Mhm.
well, what? Because I've had to do this with myself, especially writing the book. The book was therapy for me. I got to see so much of my own conditioning and therapy that
Mhm.
I didn't, so much of my own conditioning rather, that I didn't even know was there until I became a mom.
Yes.
So I always
Yes.
say, or I've gotten in the habit of saying, motherhood forced the undoing of an identity built for
Yes.
survival, good girl, right? And has given me the chance to create an identity built up on wholeness, from wholeness.
And motherhood does that. And then parenthood just keeps the party going. You know what I mean? Like every little idea you had, like, I mean, you unlearned so much during the process
Oh,
in an effort to be peaceful and happy and free, of like these like thoughts, I think.
well, and one of my intentions with the book is to um make that process more overt,
Right.
more transparent, so that
Hmm.
when you're going through motherhood and you're going through parenthood, you know this is the Olympics for self-growth.
Yes. Oh, Lord have mercy. Nobody tells you that. That's for sure.
Nobody tells you that. And it's in chapter, it might be in chapter 10, where, because I talk about being an entrepreneur, and I say, if being an entrepreneur is running drills in your high school gym class, motherhood is the Marines.
Oh.
You can't be good, you need to be excellent. But part of
Hmm.
the way you become excellent is really being honest with yourself about what the experience of motherhood and the experience of parenthood is asking for you. It's
Right.
asking you to grow. It's asking you for to look at all your unaddressed limiting beliefs, thoughts, actions. And if you don't, if you're not courageous enough to do that, to sort of recognize it, even just gently and with a lot of compassion, you're
Hmm.
constantly going to be responding right from these limiting beliefs, from this limited behavior, versus from a place of the the most expanded version of you. It's a lot of work, but if you know that parenthood is going to stretch you, if you know it's the Olympics for self-growth, then I think you win the ability to enjoy motherhood and parenthood more.
Right. And you just go about it with less shame. So, if I want to get to this last
Yeah.
question to make sure we have time for it, if a woman is listening and thinking, I don't even recognize myself anymore, I'm so knee deep in this shit, like my mom calls it a cookie with too many bites. What's the first honest step to get back to herself? What's one thing the listeners can leave today with that might sort of send them off in this trajectory?
I think this is such a great question, and there's so many ways.
Hmm.
I think the goal is isn't to find yourself all at once.
That's good.
I think it's to stop abandoning yourself in the small moments.
Mm,
Um, because the good girl and the good mom chooses self erasure one moment at a time, one
mhm,
tiny moment at a time. So you're not going to get your whole identity back all at
mhm,
once.
mhm.
So because the identity loss in motherhood doesn't, as we said, it doesn't actually happen in one dramatic moment. It's
Right.
not one dramatic event. It's like happens in 1,000 tiny self abandonments. So what you could do, I love this question, and I ask myself this question all the time, is you could begin saying, asking yourself, what do I need today that I'm pretending I don't?
That's a
Because you
great question.
think
Yeah.
she's pretending she doesn't need anything. Inside being
Hmm.
the good girl and the good mom and like the selfless mom and the competent mom and the impressive mom and the she's probably not paying attention to her own needs.
Mm.
So I think that question itself, I felt like when I first heard that, I don't even know where I heard that question, but it felt like a gut punch. And like, because I'm like, oh my God, I am pretending I don't need something. I
Yes.
asked them, what am I pretending that I don't need that would be really nice for me to have right now? So I think the first honest step is to stop making the experience that you failed, right? And really to admit that you've just been stretched in something that is enormous.
Mm.
That because really we're trying to give language to an experience that hasn't, we're giving language to an invisible experience.
Right, right.
Language, these conversations are giving language to it. And so just by stopping and saying, you know what, I haven't failed, I'm not a bad mom, right? And what do I need today that I'm pretending that I don't, is a way to return to yourself, is a way to quote unquote find yourself again.
Yeah.
And
In a way
remember,
to be good to yourself. I think that's a great way to end. Ask yourself what you're pretending you don't need today that you do need. I don't think there's any questions, just a bunch of hellos. Wow, a lot of people joined today. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited to have you. This was very much my experience. And after reading the book, like I just really felt like this would be so applicable to all moms. If you guys are watching and you're not following Dr. Danielle Dowling, I advise that you do so. She's got a lot of tricks up her sleeve. If you're not following me, please do. We are here every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time interviewing different authors. I will put the book in the show notes, but this is a great one, either for you or for another mom or anybody. This is such a good baby shower
oh,
gift,
I'm so
like just like, listen, girl, this is how it's going to go. This is such a good baby shower gift. So if you aren't following one of us, you should do so now. Also, grab this book on Amazon. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on today. And we will be here next Wednesday, noon Eastern Standard Time, with a different author. So, everybody, thanks so much for following us.
thank you.
Bye.